The rain was relentless, mirroring the storm inside me. For weeks I'd been haunted by a gnawing feeling, a sense that something was terribly wrong. My wife, Isolde, had grown distant, her laughter replaced by strained smiles, her touch perfunctory. We lived in Bristol, a city I'd always found charming, but now it felt like a gilded cage, trapping me in a nightmare I couldn't escape. I'm Quentin, 46, an IT specialist, and until recently I thought I had it all: a beautiful wife, a comfortable home, and a life filled with promise. Now I wasn't so sure. It started subtly. Isolde, who worked as a marketing manager for a local firm, began staying late at the office with increasing frequency. "Important deadlines," she'd say, her eyes darting away from mine. I wanted to believe her, I truly did, but the excuses felt hollow, rehearsed even. Then there were the hushed phone calls, taken in the garden or the spare room, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. When I asked who she was talking to, she'd brush it off with a vague, "Just work, darling." One evening I decided to surprise her at her office. I brought her favorite takeout, hoping to salvage some semblance of normalcy. But when I arrived, her office was dark, the building deserted. I called her and she answered on the third ring, her voice breathless. "Quentin." "What's wrong? I just wanted to bring you dinner," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "But you're not here." There was a long pause, filled only with the static of the phone line. "I had to go to a client meeting," she stammered. It came up suddenly. "Where?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. "Out of town," she said quickly. "I'll be back late." I knew she was lying. I could feel it in my bones. The familiar comfort of our life together was crumbling, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. Isolde was cheating on me. The next few days were a blur of anxiety and sleepless nights. I found myself obsessively checking her phone records, scrutinizing her emails, desperately searching for any shred of evidence to confirm my suspicions. I hated myself for it, for becoming this paranoid, insecure version of myself, but I couldn't stop. The truth, however painful, was better than the agonizing uncertainty. One afternoon, while Isolde was at work, I decided to clean out her car. It was a task she always put off, and I thought it might be a nice gesture, a way to show her I still cared. As I rummaged through the glove compartment, I found a small velvet box. My heart leaped. Could it be an engagement ring? Had she been planning a surprise renewal of vows? I opened the box, my hands trembling. Inside wasn't a ring, but a USB drive. My blood ran cold. I knew with a sickening certainty what it contained. Back in my office, with shaking hands, I plugged the drive into my computer. A folder appeared, labeled "Private." I clicked on it and a series of photos flashed across the screen. Photos of Isolde, naked and entwined with another man. A man I recognized. Gareth, our neighbor Gareth. The affable, always smiling Gareth who often borrowed tools and shared gardening tips. The man who had been to our barbecues, shared drinks with us, and even comforted me when my father passed away last year. He had been in our house, eating our food, laughing with us, all while sleeping with my wife. The betrayal was staggering, a punch to the gut that left me gasping for air. The photos were explicit, intimate, undeniable. They showed Isolde in a way I hadn't seen her in years, passionate, uninhibited, alive. The sight of her with Gareth, her face radiant with pleasure, was like a knife twisting in my heart. I scrolled through the images, each one a fresh wave of nausea and despair. How could she do this? How could she betray me so completely? I closed the laptop, my body numb. The world seemed to tilt on its axis, the familiar landscape of my life suddenly foreign and hostile. I stumbled to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of whiskey, and downed it in one gulp. It did little to ease the pain. When Isolde came home that evening, I was waiting for her, the USB drive lying on the coffee table like a loaded weapon. She walked in, her face bright, and greeted me with a kiss. I recoiled. "What's wrong?" she asked, her brow furrowing with concern. I gestured to the drive. "Care to explain this?" She followed my gaze, her eyes widening in horror. Her face drained of color, and she stumbled backward as if struck. "Quentin," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "Don't," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "Don't even try to lie to me. I've seen the photos, Isolde. I know everything." Tears streamed down her face. "It just happened," she sobbed. "It didn't mean anything." "Mean anything?" I repeated, my voice rising. You were naked with my neighbor, Isolde. How can you say it didn't mean anything? I was lonely, she cried. You were always working, always busy. I needed attention, so you slept with Gareth, I roared. That's your solution to loneliness. You betrayed me, Isolde. You destroyed our marriage. She sank to her knees, her body shaking with sobs. I'm so sorry, she wailed. Please forgive me. I love you, Quentin. I don't want to lose you. I looked at her, at the woman I had loved and trusted, and saw only a stranger. The years we had spent together, the memories we had shared, seemed to dissolve before my eyes, replaced by the image of her in Gareth's arms. Forgiveness was impossible. The trust was shattered, irreparable. It's over, Isolde, I said, my voice cold and hard. I want you out of this house. I want a divorce. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with despair. Please, Quentin, she begged. Don't do this. We can work through this. I promise I'll never see him again. It's too late, I said, turning away. You made your choice, Isolde. Now you have to live with the consequences. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and emotional turmoil. I moved into a small flat in the city center, unable to bear the thought of staying in the house we had shared. The divorce was acrimonious, with Isolde fighting for every penny. She claimed I was being unreasonable, that she deserved a share of my assets. I refused to budge. She had betrayed me, and I wasn't going to let her profit from her infidelity. As for Gareth, I confronted him in his garden one afternoon. He tried to deny the affair, but I showed him the photos. His face turned ashen, and he stammered an apology. I never meant for this to happen, he said weakly. It just got out of hand. Get out of hand, I sneered. You slept with my wife, Gareth. You violated my trust, my home, my life. I wanted to hit him, to unleash the rage that had been building inside me for weeks, but I restrained myself. Hitting him wouldn't solve anything. It wouldn't undo the betrayal. Instead, I simply turned and walked away, leaving him to face the consequences of his actions. Isolde's affair had a ripple effect on our community. Friends took sides, gossip spread like wildfire, and the once harmonious atmosphere of our neighborhood turned toxic. Gareth's wife, Freya, devastated by the betrayal, left him, taking their children with her. He lost his job and was forced to move away, ostracized by everyone who had once known him. Isolde, too, faced the consequences of her actions. Her reputation was tarnished, her social circle diminished. She lost her job and struggled to find new employment. The affair that she thought would bring her excitement and fulfillment had instead brought her only pain and isolation. As for me, I was left to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. The pain of the betrayal lingered, a constant ache in my heart. But slowly, gradually, I began to heal. I focused on my work, reconnected with old friends, and started exploring new hobbies. I took up painting, something I had always wanted to do but never had the time for. I found solace in the creative process, in the act of transforming pain into beauty. One evening, a few months after the divorce was finalized, I received a phone call from Isolde. I hesitated before answering, unsure if I was ready to speak to her. "Quentin," she said, her voice trembling, "I need to talk to you." "What is it, Isolde?" I asked, my voice guarded. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry for everything I did. I ruined our life, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive myself." I listened in silence as she poured out her heart, her voice filled with remorse and regret. When she was finished, I took a deep breath. "I appreciate your apology, Isolde," I said. "But it doesn't change anything. What's done is done. I can't forgive you, but I can move on. I hope you can too." I hung up the phone, a sense of closure washing over me. The pain was still there, but it was no longer all-consuming. I knew that I would never forget what Isolde had done, but I refused to let it define me. I was determined to rebuild my life, to find happiness again, even in the face of such profound betrayal. But the story doesn't end there. A year later, I received an anonymous package in the mail. Inside was a single photograph. It was a picture of Isolde and Gareth, taken recently. They were standing outside a courthouse, holding hands. They were smiling. And Isolde was visibly pregnant. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Isolde hadn't just had an affair with Gareth, she had started a new life with him. She had replaced me completely and utterly. And she was carrying his child. The rage I had thought I had buried resurfaced, stronger than ever. I felt like I was drowning, suffocating in a sea of betrayal and despair. How could she do this to me? How could she move on so easily while I was still struggling to heal? For weeks, I was consumed by anger and resentment. I plotted revenge, fantasizing about ways to make Isolde and Gareth pay for what they had done. But then, one day, I realized that revenge wouldn't bring me happiness. It wouldn't undo the past. It would only consume me, turning me into the kind of person I didn't want to be. Instead, I decided to focus on myself, on my own healing and growth. I threw myself into my work, traveled to new places, and met new people. I learned to forgive myself for trusting Isolde, for believing in a love that wasn't real. And slowly, gradually, I began to find peace. I never spoke to Isolde or Gareth again. I didn't attend their wedding, and I never met their child. I simply closed that chapter of my life and moved on, leaving them to their own devices. I knew that they would eventually face the consequences of their actions, that karma would find them in its own way. And it did. Years later, I heard through a mutual friend that Isolde and Gareth's marriage had fallen apart. They had grown resentful and bitter, blaming each other for the affair that had destroyed so many lives. Their child, born out of betrayal and deceit, grew up in a home filled with conflict and unhappiness. I felt a pang of sadness for their child, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for Isolde or Gareth. They had made their choices, and they had to live with the consequences. As for me, I had finally found happiness again. I had learned to love and trust again, and I had built a life that was stronger and more resilient than ever before. The rain has stopped now, and the sun is shining through the clouds. The storm inside me has passed, leaving behind a sense of calm and clarity. I am Quentin, and I am a survivor. I have been betrayed, broken, and rebuilt. And I am finally free.